Hi, I'm Michael Smith for Nevada Trails. Today I have a very special show. I have Rochelle Nason of the League to Save Lake Tahoe, Dennis Oliver from the TRPA, kind of as all together to talk about life on the lake and how we are stewards of the lake and how we plan to take care of the lake. And I talk to some of my neighbors and they ask questions of like, what does the league do?
What does the league do? Well, first off, in order for people to kind of place the league, we're the folks who are known as the Keep Tahoe Blue organization. We put out those bumper stickers that you see everywhere, and we have for over 50 years been the voice of people all throughout the 2 states, all across the country. We have members all over the world who just care deeply about Lake Tahoe. And we do a variety of things. We're first and foremost, we're watchdogs. We are watching what goes on with government, watching to make sure that public decisions take into account the very best interest of all people, including future generations, in a beautiful Lake Tahoe.
That's a good goal. And coming down Spooner, I saw a little sticker on a car that said, keep Tahoe blue. So it's been a good marketing thing. When people get those stickers, they donate to a fund. Is that what the program is?
They can. There's a sticker on the back of the sticker if you pick one up or request one in the mail that will give you an opportunity to help support the league. We offer the sticker in several languages. We have it in Russian and Spanish.
That was beautiful last show. Now I pay attention.
Yes.
Every time I see a Russian one, I'm thinking about my gas station where I go. They're all Russian family. They're nice people.
Yep.
Well,
people can get on get on our website at keeptahoeblue.org, and they will be able to get a bumper sticker.
Well, some of the people were asking if that you two could like compile your money together and knock down some of these old places and then turn them into grass. And I said, I don't know if they could do that, but it's not worth asking if you can generate funds to do stuff like that, because it seems like South Lake Tahoe can't really generate enough money to get old properties, and that's just because a lot of people are asking about why we have a big hole in downtown of cement and things like that. How can you help?
I'm sure we'll get there. It is actually very seriously. There are some very important programs that have existed for decades now to help take pressure off of the Lake Tahoe watershed by buying and holding for conservation purposes certain lands that aren't suitable for building. There are also programs for redevelopment, which we'll be talking about. The League has been involved in those since the 1980s, trying to encourage the transfer of old deteriorated development, its removal and replacement by more environmentally sensitive, preferable.
Oh, that'd be awesome, because you see stuff every day. And so there's a fund. They can look at a fund to donate money to on your website.
The best thing that they can do is really to let their elected officials at all levels tell them, this is important to us. We want to see lands retired. We want to see conservation. We want to see Tahoe kept as a beautiful natural area where people can enjoy outdoor recreation for generations to come. That's probably the single most important thing that can be done, because there are these very critical programs, the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act, which Senators Reed and Ensign have been tremendous champions for, to where growth had been occurring in Las Vegas, making sure that the funding that came from the lands associated with that growth would stay in the state and would come to Lake Tahoe and help keep Tahoe blue.
I like that.
So yes, it's a great. Those have been immensely important programs, and probably the number one thing people can do is let people know how much that means to them.
Well, with something like Dennis, do you all get together and talk about your points of view on things with Dennis to let him know, or if you're anti a project, or do you go public first?
Do we,
Well, I've never seen the League to Save Lake Tahoe support a project in the period of time that I've been in Tahoe, but that's only 3 years. It's my understanding that the League did support the big redevelopment efforts at State Line, the Embassy Suites and whatnot, but in
You must have missed the Kings Beach.
the
area.
Kings
That's what I was
Beach
just
commercial
thinking,
corridor.
there
That's
was-
correct.
Yeah, we do. You
They
know,
did.
the only redevelopment project that has been approved in recent years was what's known as the Cerulean Estates in Tahoe Vista. And that was a redevelopment with a little r. It wasn't formal redevelopment in the sense of the government getting actively involved in making the development happen. It was a private project to remove an old campground that had been there for many, many years and was used for seasonal recreation and part-time
Sandy
affordable
Beach?
housing. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
the old Sandy Beach campground, and it was to be replaced by a luxury timeshare resort called the Cerulean Residences. And we had a lot of concerns about that project. The community was around it was very, very much opposed. They had adopted a community plan that had actually been approved by TRPA that called for conserving the rustic nature of the area, that called for conserving the campground and continuing to offer camping and seasonal affordable housing in the area. So there were a lot of concerns about that, and we opposed it. And what happened ultimately was that the league and the landowner were able to kind of get together and work out a settlement, which TRPA did not interfere with. They really kind of went along with everything that we worked out with the landowners. And we got a much better project that is much more acceptable to the community, but from our perspective, most importantly, has a lot of watershed protections and will do a lot more to protect Lake Tahoe.
And that's really the driving force behind when you see building going on in Tahoe, whether it's redevelopment or very limited, there are limited opportunities for development on raw land. But when you see construction activity in Tahoe, what's really happening is that you're taking out something that was developed a long time ago before we had any environmental standards in Tahoe, where there was a period of time where you could just get a bulldozer out and pave stuff. And now there are standards. So when you see activity, we're taking out the bad stuff that's polluting the lake and replacing it with something that is more, that fits the standards.
So in South Lake Tahoe, I'd like to see more of that, actually.
In some cases. Now, another project that was approved by TRPA that wasn't a redevelopment project was to create a new subdivision on land next to Burke Creek. That was, and really that's the first significant subdivision that's been permitted in the Lake Tahoe Basin since the 1960s. The area has really been immune from subdivision because people were concerned that there were already far too many undeveloped single-family residential lots and that we needed to have fewer rather than more. And that's just a new direction for TRPA to allow more subdivision, and that would not be a redevelopment. So you have to kind of distinguish between these different categories. But the League is very dedicated to making sure that if and when these projects happen, they're good for Lake Tahoe, not bad for it.
There's way too many timeshares. And when I used to snowplow, I used to take care of a house in a particular neighborhood, and the whole house would be vacation rentals, and it'd be like a kid growing up by himself. It was like a ghost town. And it just was just scary. I just wish we had more families here.
This
Well,
project that
we
Rochelle's
also want
mentioned
to
on
be
Burke,
sure.
on Burke Creek, that project leverages a large dedication of public open space, bike trails. It's the first
Dennis,
neighborhood
you
in
told me
the
you
Sierras
didn't
that.
want to talk about pending litigation.
Well, I'm not
happy
talking
to
about the
talk
lawsuit.
it,
I'm
but-
saying
okay.
that these homes are all they're targeting LEED Platinum. This would be the first LEED certified neighborhood in the Sierra Nevada, and then the water quality features remove a significant quantity of fine sediment pollution from the lake that's entering the lake now. The watershed itself, the site itself, and that portion of creek is a significantly impaired stretch of creek that would be restored as a result of the project.
Actually, I
you
hear a
know-
lot of that about new projects with fixing up the amount of fine particles going into the lake. How do they measure that? I don't have a clue of what, when they say
There-
that, what they mean.
There are, the Army Corps of Engineers actually just completed a study called the Load Reduction Tool, where they did case studies that actually, that there is a formula for calculating the reduction in pollution that enters the lake, the fine sediment pollution that is really the cause of clarity loss.
Because right now, all that
So-
pollen, I guarantee my
Yeah,
neighborhood
it's not-
is just
it's-
yellow.
It's becoming less and less of guesswork and
Yeah.
more
Scientific.
science driving it, where you can actually run the equation, run the formula, and you can tell what you get.
Okay,
But you
Rochelle?
know, we're kind of getting, I think, to where the League to Save Lake Tahoe and TRPA really differ. And a lot of people say, well, they hear that we're Keep Tahoe Blue and they're the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. Aren't we all on the same page? We're all
That's what I
trying
was
to
asking, yeah.
protect Lake Tahoe. So why do Dennis and I sit here and disagree with each other? And why are there cases that go all the way to court over these issues? What's happening there? And I think that this, what Dennis is describing, really kind of gets to the heart of it. For the League, the way that we look at Lake Tahoe and the way that the Keep Tahoe Blue movement looks at Lake Tahoe is that Lake Tahoe is a special place. It is, although it's not a national park, it is a place that is of very special resource qualities that should be protected for future generations. It is an area that should be open as much as possible to public outdoor recreation, and the scenic beauty is something that should be available to be seen by all. Now, where we get into the disagreement is, from Dennis's perspective, when today, when TRPA looks at a vacant lot, like the one that is this subdivision that we're talking about, what they see is is there a water quality issue with regard to that lot, and if so, how do we deal with it? From the League's perspective, we look at it more broadly. We say, is there a water quality issue that we can address through natural means by restoring the watershed? TRPA says, well, let's pave it. If we pave it, none of this is going to run off of it. And we say, let's not pave it, let's go in and restore it, because that way we're not just protecting water quality, we're protecting the soils, which are very important for many reasons. You want to have uncovered soil as much as you can. You want to support vegetation, you want to support wildlife, you want to support fisheries. If you look at it from that kind of broad ecosystem perspective, and not just from an engineering sort of stormwater engineering perspective, how do you get the cleanest runoff?
Mm-hmm.
That's really, I think, where you're seeing a difference between the two of us. We're trying to...
I thought that even if you had turned dirt into something pretty again, that you're still, takes 10 years to turn something into a watershed, even if it's concrete or not. I heard that someplace. Is that true? I mean, to restore a watershed back to its original
The
being a
best
watershed?
recipe is to
depends a
infiltrate
lot.
at the source.
Yeah.
It needs to go
Yeah.
into the ground.
Yeah, the best thing you can do is to have undisturbed land. And the programs that I was talking about earlier with buying properties for permanent conservation are mainly about undisturbed lands and keeping them undisturbed indefinitely.
Yeah.
But actually you can do a lot of restoration with some very definite exceptions. There are things like, places where the peak of a mountain has been removed, or a wetland has been completely filled in, that it might not be possible to restore. But most of what you have, just a parking lot, you can tear that up, you can restore it.
Well, I like getting rid of the parking lots. Well, we're going to take
Yeah.
a short break and do some PSAs, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fish and Game Warden Patrick Foy. Boaters at Lake Tahoe should expect watercraft inspections at all launch sites around the lake. These inspections are designed to prevent the destructive spread of zebra and quagga mussels, as well as other aquatic invasive species. If brought into Lake Tahoe, invasive species will damage boats and the pristine waters and be impossible to remove. Remember to clean, drain, and dry your boat every time before entering a new body of water. Clean boats stop aquatic hitchhikers.
Hi, we're back with break with Rochelle Nason and Dennis Oliver of the TRPA, and you wanted to quick mention the boating program.
Because it's the height of summer, you know, we're sitting here in July. There are two things going on in Tahoe that we really want for people to be vigilant about. The first is the risk that exists of infestation from boating of aquatic invasive species at the
Oh,
lake.
I'm kind of proud
And
of this show. We've aired the
You
over
do the
1,000
PSA.
PSAs, so we're trying.
So the bottom line is this: any boats launching at Tahoe will be inspected first. We have 2 inspection programs, one for aquatic invasive species such as quagga mussels or zebra mussels, and then the other is a blue boating inspection that looks more at air quality impacts, potential water quality impacts, and noise impacts caused by boating. This guide, it's called the Lake Tahoe Blue Boating Guide. It's got a complete map of the lake showing where the launch facilities are and complete information about these programs and also boating safety. This is available. We published this a couple of weeks ago. It's available at all marinas, visitor centers, and launch facilities. So anyone who's a boater ought to pick, and even if you're not a boater, you ought to pick this up and have a look at it. It's a good resource. The other one is fire danger in Tahoe. You know, it's been 3 years since the Angora fire. It's important to remember that that fire was caused by an unattended illegal campfire, and so the bottom line take home about fire is just don't be foolish with it. Don't be reckless with fire, because in Tahoe, if fire gets away from you, we saw what can happen 3 years ago. We lost over 240 homes.
Well, I
So we
found-
don't need to live. We don't need to go through that again in
Well,
Tahoe.
when I moved here from Michigan, my stepdad was throwing cigarette butts out of the
Oh,
window.
no.
No, you can't do that.
Because they do that in
Oh,
Michigan
oh,
and they do it
yes,
in the East.
yes.
And
Yeah.
so I always think the more education on fire, this
Yeah.
is a different place. Because I pretty much think the fire on the gondola fire was someone probably chucked the butt out one of those gondolas.
That's exactly
And
right.
so we need as much education for anti-fire from people from Europe and China, and just because it's a different place here, you can't smoke carelessly. You gotta
Absolutely.
make sure you put it out, put it in your pocket, the butt in your pocket, because we don't want any littering either.
Absolutely.
Because those things don't disintegrate in the water.
Absolutely. And I'd like to emphasize, although Dennis and I may argue to the end of time about what's an appropriate redevelopment project for Lake Tahoe and whether Lake Tahoe needs more subdivisions, these are topics that we completely agree about. The cooperation with the boat inspection program and being very careful not to bring anything from infested waters to Lake Tahoe, that is of primary importance to absolutely everybody. And on the fire danger, I'd like to mention something as well, which is that because this is likely to be seen by a lot of people who actually have homes in the Tahoe Basin, who rent or own, and I'd like to emphasize, we all need to do our part. If we have to have defensible space. We have to be very careful that we're meeting the requirements of our local fire districts with regard to our own property, because there are tens of thousands of private properties in the basin. We need all of them to get into compliance for all of us to be safe.
Well, that's definitely a good point. We called the local fire people, and they came out and inspected our property, and there's a lot of things we didn't see.
That's right.
We didn't see. I mean,
Yep.
it was right there. It's just one tree in the middle of 2 other trees that was a little bit
Yes,
ailing, and
Yeah.
they said
And
to
you
get rid
think
of it.
it's all
and-
common sense, and
Yeah.
they'll point
Yeah.
things out to you that just amaze you. So it's
Yeah.
very important. I'd like to mention also there is a Lake Tahoe. You asked before about how people can help
Yes.
Lake Tahoe. There is the league administers a Lake Tahoe Quagga Mussel Prevention Fund. If anybody is interested in that, we've partnered with the Tahoe Lakefront Owners Association to get that going.
Excellent.
And a couple of other efforts, because I mentioned the league's watchdogging, and we immediately started arguing about redevelopment. There's lots of things that the league does that are very non-controversial that everybody supports. And I'd love to make a little pitch here for people to take a look at our website and think about coming out and joining us for Lake Tahoe Forest Stewardship Day. It's a program that's been supported by the TRPA in the past. I hope they'll be behind us this year again. But it's all about doing both education and active hands-on contribution to help restore a watershed and to understand how active, involved, and sensitive forest stewardship can actually help restore ecosystems. It's not an issue of either leaving it alone or logging it. It doesn't have to be at those extremes. There are ways that we can really nurture and take care of our forests and help our ecosystems return and to thrive and have a Lake Tahoe that we can be proud of.
Well, that's
to
what I
leave
said in
to
the very
future.
beginning about what do you do, but education is the main thing. So that's
Well,
that's
you
perfect.
have to.
Yeah.
With this
right.
particular event, you know, the Forest Stewardship Day, you get little kids out there planting trees. And when you take a little kid and show them how that works and have them dig the hole and put the tree in the ground and water it and all of that, they never forget. They understand what a watershed is, what the forest is, how all of this works. It plants, well, no pun intended, it plants the seed for the rest of their life.
And they germinate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how you teach people. Is you've got to show them. You've got to get them out there and show them.
I agree 100%.
So,
I
Yeah.
remember my first Arbor Day. We did that as a kid, and I've loved plants ever since.
yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So there's lots of things that the League does, lots of things that the TRPA does that absolutely everybody can get behind. There are always going to be disagreements about land use planning and what kind of building and development are appropriate and how much is okay to affect people's property rights and how we can have a prosperous community over the long run. We will all be debating those things till the end of time, but there are a lot of activities that we're absolutely all behind, including our
My
strong
neighbors want a
property
prosperous
rights
community
advocates.
for sure. I was going to
Yes.
ask you, you have a lot of young people that come to the meetings, and they'll all come up and will say something during a meeting. They'll say something. A lot of times they're wearing black. Is there any kind of message for them wearing black, or I never did kind of understand that? Is it just they're supposed to wear black, or?
That's a new one to me. No,
I
my
thought it was some
goodness.
kind of theme of the lake was dying or something. I don't know.
No, if anybody is actually representing Keep Tahoe Blue, we do ask them to dress up, to show their respect. Even though
Professionally.
we are constantly arguing with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, it is a formal government hearing and very important that everyone involved is aware of the dignity and the importance
Well, they're all
of
well
what's
dressed.
happening.
Just maybe this one gal just had a black theme for a year, but then I think she fell in love because then she was wearing aqua and looked really great. But you have some very good speakers. They're up there. They're working hard.
Thank
they're
you.
saying. So I'm not trying to say anything bad about them. I'm
Thank
just saying
you.
that they're working hard and.
Thank you. Some of them are volunteers. Some of them work for us. Some of them are students who come and learn about conservation and get some help with their academic life that way. There's all different ways that people
Well,
get involved.
if someone out there wants to join the league, how do they get a hold of you, or what's your?
They should jump on our website, keeptahoeblue.org. And we're delighted to hear from people. We also have a Facebook page. If you get on Facebook, you can check out Keep Tahoe Blue, and you'll come to the League to Save Lake
Yeah,
Tahoe.
more education the better. And then
Yeah.
Dennis, if you want to get some information about your programs, Tahoe or TRPA, I mean.
Well, TRPA is a land use a planning agency, and the two things that essentially the bottom line is the two things we do is first of all, we're a leader in protecting the lake from imminent threats like the two that we just talked about.
Big time.
And then the other is that we are the lead agency for developing policies that will ensure a viable future for Lake Tahoe, and that's why we're working on a regional plan update that imagines Tahoe, the Tahoe that we would be proud to leave behind. And so right now we are walking through all of the policies and implementation strategies that we need to have on the books in order to leave the lake more pristine than we found it.
Well, actually, right now I'm very, very pleased with the leadership.
And the league,
at,
the league is materially involved in that. They're stakeholders with us through the whole through the whole way, and Rochelle is correct. We disagree on a lot of things, but we are walking in the same direction for the lake. So.
Well,
And
I
I
like that.
should say that there's a lot of advocates for economic prosperity. There are advocates for property rights. There are advocates for various kinds of recreation, including boating, who are all actively engaged, who all care about having a good outcome here. The League happens to be the voice for the most natural solutions, for watershed-based solutions. But there are lots of issues, lots of perspectives, and we have a lot of great partners in a lot of great programs.
One of the things that I think is important to mention is that the authorizing legislation, or the compact, do you call it legislation? It's the
compact.
It's the
Compact.
Constitution
Yes.
in Tahoe.
The Tahoe Regional Planning Compact.
Right. It requires the TRPA to take into account economic, environmental, and social concerns as we go about our business and develop policies and look out for the future of the lake. And that's where the controversy lies. There are different groups that would like for us to go a little farther on one of those three pillars or the other, and that's where the arguments happen. So, if it were 200 years ago, it's taken 200 years to get Tahoe to the stage where it is now in terms of environmental degradation. And the League's been around for 50 years, and we've been around for 40, trying to undo that. It's going to take a little while, but you can't, because there's so much private property in Tahoe, you can't just say, okay, everybody out, we're going to give it back. You can't do it. There's too much private land at this stage, so it's
So I'll
not a
take
national
that idea
park.
off the list then.
Yeah, I'm going to object to this characterization a little bit. Nobody at Tahoe is saying, oh, let's get rid of all the development. Nobody is saying, contrary to things that Dennis has been saying lately, nobody is saying we want to get rid of shore zone homes and their associated piers and buoys. Nobody is saying we don't want to have a healthy business environment, and nobody is saying we don't care about people's property rights, which are constitutionally protected and sacrosanct in everyone's eyes. What we are saying is that there are different ways of approaching this. At Tahoe, at South Lake Tahoe, the economic development strategies have emphasized an airport and a convention center, neither of which has ever really come to fruition. We are advocates of a healthy economy through fostering and encouraging the smaller businesses to be able to function, green businesses, professional services. There's lots of ways that you can have a strong economy without having new subdivisions and without redevelopment projects that violate the whole idea of having a better watershed.
Well, we're down to our last minute. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we say goodnight?
Just again, back to your first question about what people can do. Let your elected officials know Lake Tahoe is important to you. Even in these very difficult times, we need to get through with a pristine Lake Tahoe. And get out there and enjoy it and help keep Tahoe blue.
Dennis?
Mine is, as I've said in the past, when you enter the Lake Tahoe watershed, if you're not lucky enough to live there, when you come over that elevation peak and descend into Lake Tahoe, you're entering a special place. You're entering the Lake Tahoe watershed. And so what I would try to just get people to appreciate is that is the we are working on entryway signs. But when you go over that crest and descend into Lake Tahoe, you're entering a special place, and you need to just act like you're in a special place.
Well,
when
I
you
agree.
get there.
Thank you for being on Nevada Trails, and I think Tahoe is the best place on earth. Thank you very much.
Amen.